Welcome to another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions podcast. My name is Molly McGrath, and I am the creator of this office altering podcast. If you are a first time listener, welcome. If you're a long time listener, welcome back. As always, you can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. All right. So today we are taking a deep dive and we are talking with Rick Girard. And I'm so excited of Stride Search and Higher Power Radio. Hi, Rick. Thanks for being our guest.
Hey, Molly. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here as always.
Yeah.
First time, but yeah, you were on my podcast and I welcome the favor. So thank you.
Oh, that was so fun. That was like a massive, Hollywood production. I love all the production that you
And by the
have.
way, you got a ton because the title of the episode was awesome, by the way.
Tell our listeners, what was the title?
You hire like Dick, I think it was. What was it?
Don't be a
dick when
Don't
you
be
hire.
a dick when you hire.
No offense to my dad because his name is Dick, but yeah, you know what? It's funny because you got a ton of downloads. I called you, I think last week. I was going to tell you like you're like my top 5 downloads already.
Oh, so fun. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the title. And entrepreneurs are opening it and they're crossing their fingers. They're like, oh, damn it. I hope they're not talking about me.
You probably are, though.
Yeah. Oh, that was so fun. And I have to, give you a big giant shout out because after we had the podcast and you and I, first time we met, we're like, oh my God, we don't have enough time. And then we schedule another call. We're like, we don't have enough. Geez, we need like a whole retreat. We could talk for hours about hiring, managing, leading, C-suite. I mean, I felt like I met my soulmate when I met you. I'm like, we speak the same language, right?
Totally. That's my jam. I tell everybody like I'm not very good at very many things, but I'm really good at hiring. That's the only thing that I'm good at and I'm passionate about, and that's it.
Yeah, and
I'm a little good at jujitsu too. But depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask. Well, you're very good at radio too. You're excellent interviewer.
That's because my mom told me I have a face for radio. So.
That's great. All right. So today we are talking about, and I'm so excited for our topic, and I'm going to back into how we got to this topic, but all company issues are people issues in disguise. I love this topic. And how I came out with this topic is after we were talking and you're walking me through your process, I'm like, I love this process, hiring from core values of your company. And the first time we talked, you go, well, I'm writing a book. I have a book. It's getting ready to be published. I'm like, what? Send it to me. So you send it to me and I print the whole thing out, hop on a plane to go to Arizona for a wedding last week. And I'm reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, he got a forward from Gino Wickman. This is killer.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And tell our listeners who Gino is, number one, and number two, how the hell you got him.
All right. So number one, Gino Wickman is the guy who wrote Traction.
Yes.
And he's the founder of EOS, which is an entrepreneurial operating system, which is, I think most startups, if you're in EO or YPO or one of those, or even Vistage, a lot of them put those systems in place for their companies. Do you run EOS at your organization?
Yes. I love Traction. It's one of my favorite, and all of my clients do as well.
Yeah. So basically, I called up Gino. I cold called him. I said, Gino, hey, look at, I run Traction in my companies. I'm a big fan. I actually, I told him kind of my story. And I just said, hey, I wrote a book. It really plugs well into the people piece because, how to hire people is not taught. And hiring managers are not trained. And as a matter of fact, I talked to a VP a few weeks ago and I said, how much interview training have you had in your career? And he thought about it for a second. He goes, maybe an hour. So, and that's the biggest point of failure. I think no fault to anybody, on the leadership side, but they're just not trained on how to effectively pull evidence out of an interview to support whether or not they make the hire. It's all based on, kind of their feeling or their gut or bias or whatever else. I mean, decisions are made not based on evidence.
Yeah.
Can you
It's a,
imagine if our court system worked that way? I
yeah.
mean, he
Right.
looks guilty. Let's just give him a guilty plea. So,
So you just call up Gino and he says, sure.
yeah. So, well, no, actually, Gino said at first, he goes, well, send me the book. I don't normally write forwards for people, but let me have a read at it. And I got a few days later, I got an email back from him. He said, yeah, I'd be happy to write the forward. And I'm like, great. And then I called him up and I was talking to him a little bit and he's like, yeah, he goes, you really know your stuff. It's really good. And we talked about some business models for it and how it would plug into EOS. So that was, I was super grateful for that.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. We could do a whole podcast on how to write a book and how to get a rock star like Gino to do your forward. That's a whole nother podcast. But talk to
Yeah.
us a little bit about, let's talk about this conversation about company issues being people issues in disguise, and how you came about this within your book, Healing Career Wounds, which we will have in the show notes for for you to get in touch and absolutely order a copy.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, basically any problems that you have within the business come down to people. I mean, it's in who you have. I'm gonna kind of totally borrow from EOS, but you want to hire people who get it, who want it, and who have the capacity to do the job. And most people hire just based on the third. They don't
Yes.
necessarily get it. They don't necessarily want it. They probably just are there for the paycheck. And that's really, really, like, that's poison for a business. And so I've just seen that, and you can hire great people who are great at one company, aren't positioned properly for your company. And it's really important that, if you think about it, you're kind of doing speed dating and you're making a decision based on, like, well, it's just a really shallow, well, he's got the skills, let's hire him. And that gets a lot of people into a lot of trouble a lot of times. You want people who, like, really want to be there. It shouldn't be, when you get to the negotiating table, it shouldn't be an issue of where, like, we've got to give him a bigger offer because he's got an offer from XYZ. You should be able to have that person lean into wanting to work for your organization, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I always constantly talking about how as many of my clients, most of my clients are law firms and
Yeah.
their attorneys.
And you're a
And
hero for that, by the way.
oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I work with I'm very selective in who I work with
Yeah.
intentionally. And it's so, in my experience, they get seduced by the resume, number one, and they're like, I need someone with experience. I need someone, batteries included. I need someone. And a lot of them are in very, very niche specific areas where finding that, but they're inflexible. They have unrelenting standards from that. And I can't get them to budge. I can't get them to budge. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to fulfill this order for you, so to speak. Here's all the reasons why this is a horrible idea. But anyways, so here's your candidate. Lo and behold, they call me. They're like, that person you sent me didn't work out. Like, it's my fault, right? And I'm like, okay, let's backtrack here again, because you were unrelenting. They need to have 5+ years specific experience in imminent domain or what have you. And you missed all these other candidates that I presented you that were phenomenal. They wanted it. They had fire in their belly. They had the passion. They had the drive. And it's just fascinating to me. And then you hire this person because you say, I don't have any time to train them. I'm like, do you know how that correlates to a human being? Because remember, you're hiring a human being.
You have to train everybody. Nobody's going to ever get it. Yeah.
Right.
And you probably hired the person that, like, had the best resume in your narrow view, but they're not going to put up with your bullshit. And
Right.
so they're going to leave,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And if they're really truly a rock star, and this, so please have my back on this one, because I like am throwing knuckles with attorneys every single day around this. They're like, you don't understand because you're not an attorney. I'm like, BS. Like, I am really good to your point. I'm really good at my job at hiring. And I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a disaster, because if they do have 5 plus 10 years experience and they are a rock star, recruiters are like, they're like sharks. They're going to be offering them more money, offering them more perks, what have you. And human people leave relationships when they don't get time and attention and feedback. Like, you got to show them the love. You got
Yeah.
to pour into them. And if they're really that good, they're going to be confident and cocky as hell that and they're going to own and know that they're good. And to your point, they're not going to have to put up with your crap. And my attorneys that I work with aren't like that. They're not throwing more money at people. They say, "Get me the best person for the least amount of money." And they're basically shopping on a Kia lot looking for a Mercedes, and then they'll come to me and they want to hire this person, and then they won't throw extra money at them. Like, they're crazy. I'm not paying them that much money because they don't have, like, then they nitpick the skill set, the knowledge, the experience. That I'm like, it doesn't matter. They don't
You
have
know
to
this.
take your job. They don't have to take your job. They got
Yeah.
10 more offers in the wings.
But this screams out to me like the fact that interviewing and hiring is a transactional activity. And the problem is, if you keep it transactional, which, like everything you're describing to me, they're looking at it like a transaction. So if it's a transaction, what's going to win? Money, right? So you've got, in a way, you've got to drill down on exactly who these people are that are leading the company, that are hiring from you. And you have to kind of bridge the gap for them, that makes them realize that, like, this isn't about somebody's just plug and play. This is about hiring somebody who's going to put up with your bullshit, number one. Number
Yep.
two, somebody who's going to actually thrive in your environment. They want it. That's far more important, whether or not somebody's going to work out, than somebody having 5 years of X and 4 years of Y. I've met so many people throughout my career that have 20 years of something, but somebody with 3 years will blow them out of the water.
Right.
Right? Like, they're more passionate about it. They've dug deeper. They've taken the time to understand it deep, like at a deeper level. They've just done a much better job of doing it rather than just doing their job. Right? So these years of experience, like, that's the first thing for me. When somebody says, I want X amount of years of experience, I laugh. I kind of go, look at it, if we're going to have this transactional conversation, and if this is just a transaction for you, I'm not the right recruiter for you, because you're going to be better served by somebody who's just going to throw people at you. And, or better yet, hire an admin, go through Monster or one of the job boards, and save a bunch of money there.
Yeah.
You don't need to be my headache. I mean, quite frankly, there's a lot of work that's put into search. I mean, calling people and recruiting,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I
That's,
mean,
yeah. And I always say to them, I'm like, you understand that recruiting is sales. Like, we have to sell your crappy attitude, and we have to sell, and I laugh, and I'm kind of having fun with that. But sometimes, I'm really clear. I'm like, listen, this is a stressed out firm. They have a lot going on. I paint the picture, and the right person's like, I could totally hang in that. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
good. I'm good. And other people are like, I just came from that. I can't hang in that. But to your point, go get an admin and do that. But at the end of the day, you have to be really clear, and you have to be honest with yourself that you have a business of, like you said, when they say I have a revolving door, I have a flop house, to bring it full circle with your company problems are people problems in disguise, is you just have to be clear that you're never going to be able to grow and scale like that, that you are always, and then you don't get to complain that, I can't find good people. I can't hire people. These people don't work out. No, you have to be clear on what type of business you're building. You're building, and I love your terminology, you're building a transactional business. So you are not going to have a business that is built on culture, which culture will win every day, all day.
all day long. And you know what? The number one problem is going to always be you. It starts with you. And if you're the leader of the company or you're the person who's hiring, it's your responsibility to make sure that that person's going to be successful. You want people that are positioned well with you. And it doesn't matter what they do skills wise. I mean, let them have some room for growth. It doesn't matter if they've got 4 years of this or 5 years of that. What matters is they've got transferable skills, and there's room for them to grow. Because again, the biggest thing I hear when I recruit people is, why are you open to talking to me right now? Well, I've been doing the same thing for 4 years and I'm bored. There's nowhere for me to grow. I had one guy tell me, look at it, for me to grow in this organization, somebody's got to die above me for me to get promoted. So if that happens, that's like kind of a terrible feeling. That person can't grow anywhere. Right. So
Yeah.
provide somebody a path for growth or a path for success, and they're going to thrive. They're going to do really well for you. You're going to be happy with that employee. But to have the attitude that, hey, I don't have time to train somebody. I just want somebody who has 5 years of this and went to that school. That's the other thing that drives me nuts.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started
I want somebody
on that
out
one.
of these top 5 schools. No, they're not going to want to work for me. I used to get all the time, I want somebody who had Google or Facebook. Great. How much you willing to pay them? Because the only thing that's going to attract that person to you is going to be, you're going to have to pay them well, or they have to be somebody who's really in the organization, completely not positioned well in that organization. They don't do well in a large company, and they really have to be at a small company. And those are like needles in the haystack. Am I going to really spend my time recruiting for somebody for that? Probably not.
Yeah, I get that all the time. They'll say, "Send me the resume." And I'm like, "I'm not sending you the resume because you're going to rip it apart. You're going to destroy it and not even talk to the person. Like, get on the Zoom, get in the room, talk to the person, and I'll give you the resume, because the resume is the second piece that you need to be speaking into when you're interviewing them." And here's something. Help me with this. So you have a good culture. Like, I'm thinking of a couple of firms that I work with. They have a phenomenal culture, right? And then use me for recruiting, get people in there. And I think you know this about me. I do a 90-day onboarding. Really do a lot of coaching, making sure that the entrepreneur doesn't screw it up. They get, very clear, concise, well communicated goals through the 30, 60, 90-day, what have you. And I mean, it is pancakes and roses and honeymoon phase and everything. And then I'll start to get a call 6 months, 3 months, whatever down the road. I got one yesterday and they said, so and so, they're not really working out. I'm like, how's that possible? What? She was working out like a month ago. And they're like, well, she's really slow. I'm like, define what slow is. And then they'll start telling me they couldn't even articulate it. And I say to them, well, how long should that job take for them to do? And they said, I don't know. I'm like, all right, well, there's a problem. So how can you say someone's slow when you don't even have the metrics, or you don't have the life cycle of the matter of the file that they're supposed to be working? So honestly, she's not the problem. It's the leadership that's a problem, and the training that's a problem. And this is why you lose people, because you're growing so fast and you just keep throwing more stuff on people without constantly having protective safety nets in place to meet monthly and go through, whiteboard everything and make certain that we're really realistic in what we're expecting out of this human.
Here's a really good, easy hack to do. Like when you're putting together a job description, don't write 5 years of this, 4 years of this. Actually put some thought on paper as to what are the performance metrics for the first 90 days that this person needs to achieve in order for me to understand that this person's successful. And, it requires a different, because again, 5 minutes is spent most of the time on putting together a job description. It's usually handed down the road to somebody who hey, so-and-so way down here, please write me a job description. And you can probably use the last job description for, from 4 years ago. But I mean, just take the time to put together some performance metrics and, 3 or 4 bullet points that are measurable on what the person needs to attain. and how they need to do it. This solves the problem of all this headache, because now you have something to benchmark them by. Now you don't have some obscure, like, I don't know if this person's really working out, and they can't put their finger on it.
Right.
So like when you're doing the job description, just spend an hour. Like, and as you get better at this, it takes less time. Just spend an hour with your team. Okay, how do we know this person's going to be successful in their first 90 days?
Oh, I love that
If I
question.
look if I look 90 days out, what has this person accomplished?
Yeah.
And that's so key, because again, now you've got something measurable. And then also, it makes it more attractive to the person who you're trying to recruit. Like if you're trying to pull somebody out of another job and put them into your job, into your opportunity, right? Um, if you have like, well, we just need somebody to come on and do some obscure work, and you're going to have to figure it out. And we're going to expect like you to like be a miracle worker and walk on water. Most people are going to fail there.
Yeah.
But if it's clearly defined out, then it becomes an attractor for a lot of people who are like, okay, well, I've never seen a job description that actually has performance metrics for the first 90 days. And this second one, that's something I really want to do, which I haven't been able to do yet. So, it doesn't take that much time. Where I find that the big faux pas is that like people invest so little time on the front end, and then they invest all this time once somebody starts on the back end trying to fix what's already been broken, rather than identifying it in the beginning and making it a non-issue because you hired the right person and the expectations are set, and like you set everybody up for success.
Yeah. I love that question of, how to set them up for success 90 days from now. And what you said, doing it with your team. I can't tell you how many listservs and Facebook groups and things of that nature I'm in, or emails I get. Hey, do you have a job description for X? And they just hijack each other's job descriptions without putting any thought into it. And what I love about that, what you said is it's coming from, and you're doing it with your team, right? Is this realistic? And then stepping back and really looking at that, is this realistic? Because the job description you wrote 4 years ago for this position better not fit anymore, because then that means that you're stagnant. You haven't grown. You haven't scaled. And to stop looking to your buddy at the bar association or what have you. So often they'll say to me things of that nature, like, well, I got this from my buddy, and this is what his paralegal does for less money. I'm like, well, good for him or her. Like, what do their books look like? What are their revenue goals? What are their goals? Yeah, but they're also working 7 hours, 7 days a week. Is that the business you want to model?
Yeah. Again, I would just put it down to like, putting the time investment up front and making sure that like you have everything in place for somebody to succeed. Because otherwise, I mean, who's it? Benjamin Franklin used to say, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. And then that's what hiring process is for 99% of the companies out there. It's a failure based product. It's like, and I've talked to CEOs of companies that have said to me, there's no real way to hire. Like you just got to do it by feel. And that never sat right with me. Like, I don't believe that for a minute. There's systems for everything. So why can't you systematize your hiring process in such a way that's going to be effective and efficient and save everybody's time, including the candidates? Their time is really important as well.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do is hire somebody who's jumping ship from one company, or like, joining your company, and they have expectations over here and your expectations are over here. And, it's just going to be a big clash from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
investing the time up front just to understand what you need from a job, and job descriptions are not a wish list of skills. They're not like your perks, right? And that's what job descriptions I've seen. Like there's this whole employer branding thing for your job descriptions, which I think is a bunch of hooey. Um, because the fact of the matter is people don't really care about, free lunch, They don't care about your ping pong tables or whatever else you have. Not that those matter anymore because everybody's working from home, but they don't care that much about that. They care about how is me joining your company going to benefit me?
Mm.
And that's it. Like that's the only question that you really have to answer for that person.
Wow. And you have to get clear on that before you even go to the marketplace and get, I love that question. Say that again.
How is your opportunity going to benefit me?
Yes. Wow.
And
I,
it's often looked at like, hey, what are you going to do for me when you come to my interview? You're going to interview at my company. What are you going to do for me?
yeah.
Well, that's the wrong way to look at it. That's like 1980s, hiring mentality. That's like Wall Street, right? Like all those Charlie Sheen movies that were terrible.
Yeah. What would you say, like one final question for you, when we talk about all company issues are people issues in disguise, the typical areas that companies have troubles with production systems, money, calendar, leads, people leaving, going, what have you. If our listeners were to take a pen and paper out and just list like the top 2, 3, 5 things that they're struggling with, the issues they're struggling with in their company, and then what would maybe be one tip or exercise you give them to start with the people versus all the traditional stuff that we do, KPIs, PNLs, blah, blah, blah. Like, I love this little biohack of start with the people versus the number and the data and the spreadsheets
Yeah.
of going there.
I think it's really important that first you figure out who you are. Like, what is your corporate values? Now, those aren't the words that you pull out of a book or like, I, I had, I had one guy who hired a marketing firm that like, he had all these words behind his desk that said like teamwork and empowerment and all these things. And I went in, I met with the CEO and I noticed it was really quiet. It seemed like a morgue, like I was walking into. And as I asked him about his corporate values, he's like, "Oh yeah, we thought they sounded great. So those are our corporate values." I'm like, "Do you live them?" Um, it's like, "Well, yeah, I think so." Like your core values are what you live, and it starts with your leaders, right? And so that team can kind of distill down what your core values are. Now hire around that. Hire people who also have those same values. That's where a lot of people run into trouble, right?
Mm.
If you're a warrior culture and you're all about backstabbing each other and making sure that like take no prisoners, we're just going to sell everybody, then you need to hire people that are of that same mindset.
Oh, I
where you
love that.
where you're going to get in trouble is when you hire somebody who's like a really nice person who's thinking that it's going to be a collaborative environment because it's all part of your corporate values, and that's not the case, right? So you need to, and again, this this is not a, values are different than like hiring the same person over and over again, right? So this creates more diversity because you know values are different for each individual, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you look like or anything, right? All kinds of different people hold different values, and so you just need people that align well with what your corporate values are, and those people are going to do well. They're going to want to be there, and they're going to really excel at the work because they see the opportunity there. I mean, there is no kumbaya company. Everybody tries to put it off like, our company's so wonderful. And I think the ones that advertise the most are like, we're the best environment. I mean, those are probably the biggest shit shows out there.
Yeah.
And everybody knows it.
Yeah.
So, just own it.
I love that. As you were saying that, the empowerment and things of that nature, I think of some firms that they'll say, and all right, I love this because if your company issues are money, if your company issues are production, that people leaving their clock watchers are leaving at 5 o'clock and things of that nature. I'm thinking of multiple firms that I work with right now. Their number one core value is family first, right? But I'm constantly getting my phone and email blown up that Susie leaves at 5 o'clock every day for her son's baseball game, that Bobby is blah, 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 comes in late because
Well,
they
that's
have to.
family first.
That's
That's not
family
living your core
first.
values, right?
There's nothing wrong with your people. It's wrong with your core values. I love this. Oh my God. I have
That is so
goosebumps head to toe.
yeah, you need to change your core values because that's not who you are.
That's
If
not who
you're
you
not
are.
going to live who you say you are, people are just they're going to check out. They're going to bounce to somewhere else.
And you're going to be frustrated as an entrepreneur. Like one of my true core values, personally, professionionally, everywhere, and any human being, anyone that interacts with me, including my kids, know this, is brutal honesty. Like if that is like number one, you honestly, I can't have any sissies in my company. I can't have anyone that's going to be crying in the corner because I was too harsh on them or what have you. I interviewed someone yesterday to come in as our COO, and that was exactly what I said to her. I'm like, listen, this is your job. You're going to monitor our internal meetings. You're going to take the notes. You're going to do the dictation, things of that nature. I'm like, it's not for the weak. I'm straight to the point. Everybody's expected to be brutally honest. And if you're going to be a yes chick and keep your mouth shut and shake your head and then feel like you're being dictated to or what have you, you're not going to last here. And I'm not going to hire you. So I hire from that place to see where people have some healthy pushback, where they're able to speak, facts without emotion, where they're able to clarify, verify, things of that nature. It's huge. So I love this. Yeah. If you're, so listen, attorneys, because this is your number one biggest complaint is you're always constantly saying, my team, they leave, I work all weekend and they leave at 5 o'clock and blah, blah, blah. Well, then you need to change your core values because every one of you have family first and it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, and you know what? Nobody's going to work harder than you.
No.
And that's just you got to be okay with that. The fact of the matter is nobody's going to work as hard as you are because you're the person running the business.
Yeah.
So get over it.
Yeah. Gary Vee did an amazing YouTube video on that, which I love. Like, stop expecting your employees to work as hard as you do. And it's just a fact. But one of your core values can be hard workers, hard working. It could be something of that nature or play with the word, but really clear. It could be that, we're not clock watchers. I don't know, but be really clear about it and distill it down. Stop picking these buzzy kumbaya empowerment team centric team, like these words that people don't know what that means. Break it down to kindergarten level and really get clear on what they mean for you, and then you can find a word that can distill it down, right?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I remember seeing a YouTube video a while back. There was something about I forgot what it was. I'll link it to you later, but it was like the CEO of a Bay Area tech company, and he was talking about how they broke down and they did their core values, and basically they broke them down in phrases.
Oh,
So it wasn't like the core value isn't this. It was kind of like instead of work hard, it's like we love to get dirty or something like that, right? So it was broken down into terms of like what that means, and then decisions are made based on those too. So as they run the business, Amazon, I've had experience with Amazon in the past, but Amazon really like they live their core values, and their number one core value is customer obsession, right? So that's something that they hold very dear, and they build that into their interview process. So if you just take your interview process too, and you build interview questions around exactly like around your core values that are designed to like gather evidence to support it, then it becomes a much more powerful and useful tool that interview does. Because now I'm getting evidence. I could say like, Molly, walk me through a time when you did X, right? And everybody, there's critics of behavioral interviews. Behavioral interviews to me are like the strongest way that you can interview somebody because you're actually gathering like actual support or actual like data on what somebody did, because past performance is usually a key indicator of future performance, right?
mhm.
So if somebody just went and they punched a clock every day, that'll come out in the interview. If somebody really dug in and goes, well, I saw there was a problem here and I took it upon myself to fix it you know, because it needed to be fixed, those are the people that you want to be able to gather that evidence, and that's the person you want to hire, right? So it really doesn't matter if somebody has 5 years of X or 4 years, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it completely negates these preconceived notions that I need a plug and play person.
Yeah.
And you're never going to get a plug and play person. There's never somebody who's 100% on board. Like I could present somebody who's 100% on skills and there's nothing for them to learn and they're totally not interested in doing the job. Why would anybody want to go do the same thing they're doing now just at your company for probably like you know, a moderate salary increase maybe at best, but then, they're not comfortable. It's new. It doesn't make sense. It's
Right.
got to be something that solves my problem first.
Oh, wow. That's so fantastic. Oh, we're going to have to do another episode on core values, I think. We could go all day on that. I love this. So if you're dealing, your company issues are, whether it's money, it's cash flow, it's time, it's production, it's process, it's profitability, it's KPIs, it's people not being able to keep people. I love this analysis that we just kind of broke down, and it really comes back to getting really clear on your core values within your company.
Yeah,
It
who you are in hiring for, again, I'm going to steal from EOS because I'm a big fan, but like you got to hire people that get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. And I'll add a fourth thing to that is that they have the ability to grow. There's something in it for them.
mm, yeah, and you can communicate that and you're clear on that.
And by the way, when you have something to offer somebody that's more than money, like, we can grow your career this way, we could do, it benefits them from a professional or personal standpoint, then you don't have to necessarily come up with a huge offer
Right.
to get them to join. You're
Nope.
not going to have to come up with Google numbers.
Yep. Yep. I mean, even this week alone, probably have lost 5 deals, meaning that where candidates were ready to take the offer and then they took another offer, went through the interviewing process, and it was to that point, was it actually for less money? And then one of the law firms came back and they're like, we'll give you a sign-on bonus, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. And, when I look back after this conversation, I believe it was, and the attorney even said to me, do you think that I was too honest? And I painted the picture that we were super busy and everyone's here stressed out and we really need it. I'm like, no. And I couldn't pinpoint it, but now I'm going to go back and be like, you need to get clear on your core values and really communicating that, because I know this firm has rockin' core values. They just aren't clear on it. They haven't documented it. They haven't communicated it. They aren't consistent, and they aren't putting it through in their interview process. Because if they had that, I know anyone would go work for them for even less money.
Well, in that case, though, because I've seen that happen lots of times too. In that case, what it is they did do a good job of connecting the dots for that person to where the person really saw the benefit of joining the organization. And
Yeah.
that's like, as we get the workforce, there's more millennials and Gen Z into the workforce now. They don't care as much about money. They care
Nope.
about cause. They care about other things that are more important to them. And so you really have to shift that mindset. And as you're going through the interview process, again, it's not about you. It's not yes, you need to fill this job, but it's not about me if I'm hiring you. It's about you and me figuring out how I can connect the dots for you so you can see yourself working here. You can see yourself flourishing here and growing here and being innovative and productive and all those things that you want to be. Because I
Mhm.
believe that everybody wants to be great at the work that they're doing. Nobody takes a job and with the intention that they're gonna like just go there and kick back and do a shitty job. They all want
No.
to do what people want to do well at work.
Yeah,
So
they want
you
to
just
belong to difference makers. They want, to your point. I mean, so wow, as you said that, I'm like, even if you're not in the hiring phase right now, even if that's not your problem or what have you, don't like be like, oh, I don't need to listen to this. No, you do, because even going back to your existing team, I love this. Go back and create a half-day retreat with them. Make it fun, making it about personal and professional growth, and bring them internally and really take your team through this exercise, identifying your core values, number one, and number two, and ask your existing team and the people that you employ of why they're there. Like, what's in it for them to be there? And you guys document all that stuff on a whiteboard and really getting clear on that. So don't gloss over this. This isn't a podcast about hiring only. This is about where you can have an opportunity to either create a turnaround or for an opportunity to leverage and an opportunity to systematize and definitely revamp your hiring process.
Absolutely. I am a big believer, though, that the reason why companies fail is because they fail to get good at hiring. That's it.
Me too, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll hang my head on that all day long.
Yeah. And put more trust in the people that are actually screening your people and talk to them. And like, I've gotten in the habit where I just throw out resumes and I do an assessment now, and I might provide a LinkedIn profile, but the resumes to me are riddled with like untruths or lies, right? Like,
Untruths, I
you
like
know,
that.
yeah, like there's a lot that's left out. There's a lot that's put on that's like irrelevant. The only valuable information for me on a resume is the job history. Like, I can see where they've worked, and even that creates bias sometimes. But contact information and really the white space. That's where all the value is, in the stuff that's not being said on the
Yes.
resume. And most people don't write their own resumes. They hire a resume writer to do it. And, again, they write those to optimize for search engines on job
Right.
boards.
Totally.
So, it's to me, it's like the most useless tool. Don't base your decision on whether or not you want to interview somebody on a resume. Base it on an assessment that you get from the recruiter, or you can even have an admin do it. But gather that information from them, and then, like, if they fit, if they align well, then bring them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, we could talk all day. All right. How can our listeners get a hold of you?
So they can always send me an email, rick@stridesearch.com. I'm also reachable. Like, I have a radio show and podcast too called Higher Power. It's Higher,
Yes.
HIRE. It's not a religious show. Sorry, guys. So Higher Power Radio, and it's like an entrepreneur based podcast. We're trying to train entrepreneurs and business leaders to do a much better job of hiring. So we talk about this all the time. We had Molly on. It was great. You can also find me at stridesearch.com or stridesearch.com or rickgirard.com. My book will be dropping in about 4 weeks. So
Great. We're going to put the links all in the show notes, and make sure you get a copy of Rick's book. It is not just for the employee. It is absolutely geared towards the entrepreneur, and we'll have everything. So it's healing. What's the name? Healing.
It's called Healing Career Wounds.
Career
It's
Wounds.
Startup's Guide to Hiring Ridiculously Successful People.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And so it's 100% written for entrepreneurs. This is like the DIY. These are my people. So I've always worked with startups. When you're doing it in the beginning, the best thing that a CEO or a founders can do is get really good at hiring, because then that proliferates throughout their organization as you build your organization up. So you're just giving yourself that much of a leg up to be able to be successful.
Oh, thank you so much for being our guest today. I think this is a good stopping point, because as you know, you and I could talk for hours.
Probably.
Oh, great. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for being our guest today.
You're welcome, Molly. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. This has been another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. Until next time.